Today, let's do something really cool and interesting using automation rules. Now, before I show you what I have done using the rules, I want to basically discuss this requirement, this question asked on the community. Now, recently, last year, which was only a couple of days back, I received this question: autofill field time spent when issue status is changed. Now, I will basically summarize what this question is all about. Now, this user, Kirill Gutman, I'm sorry for the bad pronunciation, but I wanted to mention the name. Now, this question is all about calculating the time spent on an issue when the issue is transitioned, let us say, from to-do status to in-progress status. So let us say when you start the work, you may want to change the status from to-do to in-progress, and it will probably start some kind of a counter. And then when you move the issue to, let us say, done, he wanted, I guess it could be she, but the user wanted to basically autofill the time spent field in Jira. Now, on cloud, I guess this is a requirement on cloud. On cloud, I don't think you can autofill or pre-fill a field like this, but you can certainly fetch the information from the change log or the change history. Now in Jira, you also have this option to take a look at the change history, and based on the change history, you can do some calculations. So at least you can find out when this issue was moved to in progress status, and maybe it was there for a couple of hours, and maybe you want to then find out the time or the date when the issue was maybe moved to done. So you can definitely calculate or find out at least the time between these transitions from the change history. Now, for doing this, there are a couple of ways. Number one, if you have an app like Scriptner, I'm assuming that we are on cloud, but you can also, of course, do the same thing on server. On server, it is definitely a bit more easy because you have access to the Jira Java API, but you can always access the change history using REST API. So using either Scriptner, both on cloud and server, or using automation rule, you can fetch the change history. Using automation rule, you have to basically call the REST API. Now the REST API, or I should say the endpoint that you need to call, is this one, REST API 3 issue, followed by the issue key that will replace, of course, by a smart value, or maybe by using a variable in your script. And then, of course, you need to pass this parameter called expand is equal to change log. So you have the change log or the change history. Now, if I show you this endpoint, if I, let us say, I am, of course, looking at this this Talent API tester, where I can show you the history, the change log part. So if I include this parameter expand is equal to change log, I will get this change log, which is, of course, part of the JSON response that you get, and you can find this histories, and within histories you have quite a lot of information. For example, the ID of the histories, the author, and the main thing that we want to know is the field or the item that changed. For example, for this particular part, resolution was changed, and also the status of the issue was changed from in progress to done. So this is, of course, one part. Now, of course, you have the option to write a script in case you're using Scriptner on Jira to do wonderful things using Groovy with the JSON response. But you can do quite a lot of things as well using automation rules. Of course, it is not that straightforward, but it is possible. So let us see how we can do that. Now, when you are using automation rules, You can first of all define the trigger, like when you want this rule to be triggered. Like in this case, I'm just, for sake of this example, I'm trying to trigger this rule when the issue is moved to done, when the issue is maybe resolved. It is up to you. And then you have the option to configure one action called send web request. Now in the web request, you have to call one URL. That could be your own Jira's URL. And then you have to, of course, authenticate. You have to specify the header, and then you have to specify the method. Like if you're trying to just fetch the information, you can use get, and then you can in the webhook body, maybe you want the issue data. It depends, right? I mean, it really depends what you're doing, like with the method. But you have the option, these options that you can configure. Now, if you're expecting something back, I think you can simply check this delay execution of subsequent rule actions until we have received a response. I think this is something that you have to do because you have to wait for the response. Now what I have done in my rule, I've configured this rule where I'm calling my Jira's own URL followed by REST API 3 issue and issue key, and of course the authentication part in the header. And I'm making sure that I wait for the response. Now when I get the response, I will do something with it. Now let us first do this part. Let us first just try to print the response that you will get back in this smart value called webhook response.body. So basically, if you look at this example here, it will show you that if you want to read the body, you can use this smart value webhook response. And if you do dot body, you can basically get access to the body part. Now, if you go back to your Talent API, if I go back to my Talent API tester, now this is of course my body, starting with of course expand. Now within body, I am interested in histories part. So if I just want to access the histories part, or rather I should say changelog part, I can do changelog, and then I can do something like histories. Now this histories, if I use this smart value here, I will get this particular part of the whole JSON, like only the histories part. And then we'll do further things with the histories. We'll probably iterate over them. Now let me show you this much, how it will work. I'll probably publish my rule. I'll enable it and I'll publish it. And I'll probably go to the audit log where I can probably monitor what I can do. And what I can do with the response. So I'll probably open this maybe one of the issue where I want to simulate this, and I'll probably go to my bug tracking project where I want to show you how it will work. So let us open maybe BT38 or whatever. The actual issue type is not really important. We just want to simulate how it will work. Maybe I'll open a fresh issue so that we don't really have anything junk. I don't really want to show you the previous mess. I was actually working on this and trying to make it work. So this looks good. I believe in this particular case, let us first change something. Maybe I want to start the progress. Then I may want to maybe add a label. I want history to have some values, admin. So I've done some updates. And if I try to access the same issue from my REST API, BT-35, I'll save it, send, and hopefully we'll have some a few items in the history. So we do have like this history section of the whole JSON, where you can see here that we added a label. We can also take a look at maybe the status, I believe, change the status, and we have information. So we have some change history. Now to trigger this automation rule, I'll move the state. I'll change the issue status to done so that we can trigger this automation rule. I'll go back to the automation rule and I'll do a refresh. Now what I want to show you is the log part. Now this is the log where you can see the JSON. It is of course not really formatted properly, but if you pay close attention, we are basically focusing on the histories part. And if I show you the JSON response here, it is starting from this part here where you have the ID 18230 followed by 18227, and you can find the same thing here, like starting with ID is equal to 18232 and then 18230, which should match with our hopefully it should match. I think so. Let us do a quick check. 18230. I'll copy it. I'll paste it here. And yeah, we have this here. And maybe one more. Let us check. And by the way, we are working on, I believe, the same issue. So it looks okay to me. And I think what we now need to do, we need to now learn how to iterate over these items. Now, if you are familiar with smart values are of course, I mean, you're not really writing proper code, but you can still do quite a lot of things. In case you want to iterate over a list of items, you can do something like this, where you can start with the hash, and then we are trying to iterate over histories. So if you do just this part and make sure you close the it's like a closing tag. So if you are trying to, let us say, focus on the history part or the histories part here, just make sure you close the tag. And then within the histories, you have, of course, further sections like ID, and within ID we have items, and within items you have something like from string and to string. And of course, for each and every history, we have created like a date. That is, of course, important. Now, if you go back to the rule, I'm trying to print the ID, and I'm also trying to print the date when this change happened. And then within that particular part of within this ID, you also have items where you can iterate over those items. And for iterating over these items, I'm using, of course, hash, and then of course I'm closing it. Now, within these items, I have of course from string and to string. So for each and every ID, it will go through items, which is usually one. It can be more than one, but it will basically print all the changes like from string and to string. And this is, of course, a simple way to, not really that simple, but it is, of course, a way to fetch the information. Now the good thing is that you can always do some calculations, like mathematical calculations, because you can anyways find this information in the history tab. But the idea here is to do some calculations, or maybe you want to, let us say, calculate the difference between dates or time, two dates basically, with time, of course. And you may want to, based on that particular information, you may want to, let us say, log time on the issue, because you also have the option, if you look at this option here called log work, you can actually log your work. And maybe you want to log the work, or maybe you want to again call another endpoint to log work. We have discussed this in the past, like how to log work on an issue. For example, I can show you something like this: add work log. If you look at this add work log, we are using this post method, and we are trying to simply pass in this time spent. Comment part is, of course, optional, but you can do that if you want. So you can maybe call this endpoint to add a work log. That is, of course, up to you how you want to configure it, but I wanted to show you. Now, if you also take a look at this BT35 issue, what I was also trying to do, I was also trying to add a comment. Now, the process to iterate over these, or basically, I was trying to show you this part. I am trying to just add a comment on the issue so that you can see how it looks like. So let us say if we have a comment added on the issue. So you can see here that on this particular issue, we do have this comment where you can see things that are actually coming from the change log. And you can see here that we have the date and time, and you can then use some calculations. If you go to the smart value documentation, you can find this page called use smart values to manipulate and format dates. Now, you will find examples here on how to calculate maybe business days. Maybe you want to add some dates. I'm sure you can also calculate the difference between two dates. So there are quite a lot of things that you can do. And the good thing is that we are doing it by not writing a script. I know on my channel I talk quite a lot about Scriptner for Jira because you can do a lot of amazing things with Scriptner. But automation rules will also let you do some advanced things like, of course, we have been talking about smart values and we have been talking about things that you can do with these smart values. That was my intention, but I also wanted to show you that using this send web request, you can also call, or you can basically call an API. You can consume an API and you can actually do maybe just a get, or maybe you want to post something in case you want to. We discussed it earlier in one of our video where we discussed how to call a webhook. I guess we did. Let me just check if I talked about this. So what I always do, I always try to, of course you can search on the channel, but I have been organizing the videos and everything that I share in these different courses. Of course, everything is free. So we are talking about mastering Jira Cloud automation because we are trying to become masters in automation. So what I was looking for, I believe was the webhook. So we did talk about this webhook part where, of course, we discussed this incoming webhook, but maybe we'll also discuss a couple of more examples where we'll call an external API, because in this particular case, we just call Jira's internal API, not internal, but Jira's own API, REST API, the same Jira instance. Of course, we did authenticate, but maybe we'll take a look at some other examples. Maybe we want to integrate Jira to some other tool. I think this can be useful when you have to, let us say, keep things in sync. Maybe you have another tool. Maybe you have tools like ServiceNow, and you want to update the status of your ServiceNow tickets when you do something in Jira. So we discussed earlier how to handle the incoming web request, but now you also know how to call, how to basically consume, or how to basically make a REST call. So that is all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you also learned something new today. Thank you very much.